This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
We get it. Life gets busy. Luckily, with Peloton Tread, you can still get the challenging workouts you crave. Only have 10 minutes? Take a quick Peloton workout. Want to go all out? Chase down your goals with 20 to 45-minute tread workouts. No matter your goals or time, Peloton has everything you need to become everything you want. Find your push. Find your power. Peloton. Visit onepeloton.com.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film Festivals. This is, what report is this, number 4, I think? This is report number 4 from the Venice Film Festival, the 81st Venice Film Festival, and we've returned to where it all began, the Beetlejuice Terrace, looking out on the Adriatic Sea and the beautiful beach, and there's a generic beat playing in the background, and I am joined once more by David Moriquand,
who I'd really appreciate if you didn't call me, what was it you said?
The owner of Euronews.
Yeah, exactly. No, yes, from...
Recently fired from Euronews for claiming to be the owner of Euronews.
Thank you, John.
And Amber Bryce. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you. Very happy to be back. It feels like only yesterday we were together.
And indeed it was. And Amber is in charge of the social medias of Euronews as well. So she'll be, she's been all over the festival covering press conferences and whatnot. And we're going to really talk about one thing today, which is Joker. And my French escapes me, so I'm going to move to the French speaker for this. Joker.
Folie à deux.
There you go. That will be a name that I don't think will ever be pronounced in most cinemas in non-French language territories.
Although I have to admit, I wrote a whole article on Euronews Culture, please, that cheeky plug, but on how the marketing for Joker Folie à deux got the grammar of the French wrong in the original thing. There's a little accent on the A, and they got it the wrong way round. And essentially they changed it, but yeah, it was a little bit embarrassing.
That must have cost a little bit of money, but at least it's not as embarrassing as the Megalopolis critics quotes scandal. Yeah, quite. There's something for a social media manager like you, Amber, to take note of.
100%. I mean, it certainly got them a lot of attention, and I mean, that film has really benefited from all the bad press, hasn't it? So I'm gutted I didn't see it at Cannes. I'm excited to see. I keep saying to David, I just can't wait to see if they do the intermission thing, where they spoke to the screen. Do you think they're going to do that in all cinemas?
I don't think they'll do it in all cinemas. I think they'll definitely do it in all festivals, though. And is it showing at London?
I think so, yes, and which would be a good thing for you, Amber.
The London Film Festival?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that it will be showing there, so maybe you can catch it there, but my God, I hated that film. I know, but let's move on collectively, but just like, that didn't work.
You can refer to an earlier episode from our Cannes series of Writers on Film Festivals for that episode. Also, as I mentioned, the London Film Festival's just been published today a event which I will be hosting with an interview with Tim Roby about his new book, Box Office Poison, about film flops. So tickets will be available at the beginning of October for that event, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's the first time I've hosted an event for the London Film Festival. I'm really pleased to be there.
Well, John, I'm so happy you say this because I'm going to the London Film Festival this year, so I'll get tickets to that.
Great! Yeah. Wait until you see that it clashes with Megalopolis, and all your promises will be as nothing. We've just been talking about film festivals generally, so just before we move on to Joker 2, as it will now be known for convenience, I wanted to get your impression of film festivals. You've had a few days now, Amber. This is your first major film festival. So, what do you think of the experience so far?
I'm really enjoying it. I feel so privileged to be here. Every time I go into a film and I'm in the screening, it just feels so exciting. The atmosphere is it's just really something. It feels so, I don't know, kind of surreal to be here. But, one thing that has hit me is just how tiring it is just watching films, and just watching particularly the competition ones in the morning, and then you're like, oh my goodness, half the day's gone, and I haven't even done any writing or anything else yet, and it is surprisingly, it takes a lot out of you, and I've only probably managed to see about 3 films max, I think, if that. I don't even know, maybe just 2 films max a day, and that's felt like quite a lot. So but no, I've really enjoyed it, and just meeting other film fans as well is always great.
And plurality of opinion, as you were mentioning as well, because we were discussing, and we'll get into this with Joker, but it's kind of lovely when you get to meet film fans such as yourself, John, and Nick, who was on one of these episodes, and Amber, who don't take it too personally and don't see it as a personal offence, where you can disagree in a constructive way as opposed to just get your heckles up.
Yeah, I think you've got to get, as a critic, as somebody who writes about film, as somebody who watches a lot of films, has a lot of opinions, you've got to get into the habit of being wrong about stuff as well, and knowing how to listen to other people and exchange opinions in a respectful, lively, fun way. People often accuse film festivals as being somewhat elitist, and it's certainly difficult financially to get here and to get jobs in the industry which allow you to come to these places. But I think once here, there's a real plurality of opinion, as you said, and a real democratic sense of, I don't care what the film is, someone will love it and someone will hate it, and they will all have really good reasons for doing so. It's rare that I agree with someone 100% about all the films, and if I do, I find I immediately suspect them or myself for why are we having this groupthink,
Right, and it's something that I mentioned to you on one of these previous podcasts here in Venice, is that it's always just a joy to be able to talk about these films, and we can be completely contrasting on our opinions, but that there's a shared level of respect, because I know this sounds like a cliche at this point, but every single critic is watching a different film, and everyone will have their own unique take on it, and sometimes there'll be very similar takes, sometimes they'll be wildly contrasting, but I think that is the joy of these film festivals, that we're privileged enough to see these films in advance compared to the usual public, and if you disagree with one take, it's not the end of the world. There are other opinions available, and Amber, you were mentioning one of your friends who has a major problem with this.
Yeah, I've definitely run into issues in the past with some conversations with friends where I think some people can be sensitive to if you say that you don't like something, and they loved it. They feel a personal attack, that their opinion is somehow wrong. There's also so much to be taken into account, and this is something that I know David has spoken about in the past, being a film critic, but also your experience of a movie is defined by so much. You could be having a bad day, you could be really tired, you could have just seen something else that's still in your mind, and also you can come back to things and change your opinion. It's constantly evolving, and so I don't think when some people feel they have to be completely steadfast in their opinion of this is great and I will not back down from it, and anyone that thinks differently is wrong, it doesn't make any sense, because it's obviously something that is completely open to interpretation. And ultimately for me, critical consensus aside, it's just how you react personally to a film. There are some films that I've seen that I know to be great films, but I've not particularly liked them and wanted to watch them again. And for me, The Godfather, I don't particularly, it's like I know it's a really good film, but I've like never wanted to watch it again. You know, it's just because it personally wasn't sort of. There's films that maybe critically would be considered not very good films, but I love and will go back to. So yeah, there's so much to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tweeted something very similar recently about, there's a difference between quality of something, if it's something that's good or bad, and enjoyment. Enjoyment is separate, really. I enjoy a good kebab. It's not necessarily great for me, health-wise, and it's not. I wouldn't consider it high, haute cuisine. But sometimes you just want a dirty kebab.
And like one example I was using to illustrate this with the conversation with Amber is I remember, and Luca Guadagnino had a new film this year on the Lido with Queer. I remember seeing Suspiria here when it premiered, and with The Way of Expectation as a Dario Argento remake, I came out of it just thinking, oh my God, this really didn't do it for me. And I remember seeing it, and I have a friend here on the Lido, who shall remain nameless, who is fond of saying that, your first take is it. That's it. You do not revisit that. That is your first take. And I couldn't disagree more. I remember seeing Suspiria again several weeks later and just thinking, what on earth was I thinking? I wrote, I wouldn't say a scathing review, but kind of a smug review. I'm kind of embarrassed of that review now. And revisited it and just thinking I was completely wrong. And it's okay for film critics to be wrong, because you watch these films in a bubble, and you watch them in some cases back to back, and you don't have time to collect your thoughts again. You're just back into it and have to kind of wipe the slate clean, and sometimes that works against you. And for me, for example, Suspiria is one of my favourite films of the last 10 years, and I can't believe I got it wrong the first time, but I'm glad I did, purely because it just reinforces this or destroys this notion that film critics have to be right on the first time. These are first look reviews.
Yeah, I never think of myself as an expert in cinema. I have a fairly profound, deep knowledge of film and film history. But when it comes to sitting down and watching a film for the first time, it's like, you're beginning again. Yeah. I really enjoy in a festival, one of my sort of secret pleasures is looking around at the audience and seeing everybody's faces and seeing what they're registering at any moment. And that's just something that it reminds me that we're all here and we're all taking it in. Everybody's open to that experience.
On that as well, I found it interesting being here and watching these movies in a packed audience and what people laugh at, and you kind of think it really opens your mind to sometimes people are laughing things that I wouldn't necessarily find funny, but then other parts that I'll find funny, it's deadly silent. So that's always really interesting as well. The
Brutalist got a lot of laughs, and I wonder if that would get laughs outside of a festival, because I'm not sure.
Maybe not, but that is also the joy of kind of seeing it also in a packed audience, because when you're watching these films either in an empty cinema or at home, you don't get the same experience. And I think that kind of, again, in that kind of age-old, worn-out cliched of just a communal experience is important for a film.
I remember watching Nocturnal Animals here, and Michael Shannon turned up, and the entire audience burst into cheers. And I don't think you'd get that anywhere anywhere but the Venice Film Festival. That's a wonderful experience. One final thing before we move on to the film, and this is a little bit about the film. Obviously, I'm not going to publish this podcast until after the film has begun to be screened at 7 o'clock Italian time tonight. But there has been a lot of chatter on Twitter, a lot of people dropping their opinions and letterboxed reviews. I noticed lots and lots of letterboxed reviews went up. How do you feel about people breaking that embargo?
It's a particular pet peeve of mine, just purely because I think, embargo rules have changed over the years, and I think they've got it right now, which is essentially that film critics have the opportunity to take their time and to write. And there isn't this mad dash after, you still do it because, you have to publish, you have to kind of, remain on top of the embargo rules. But at the same time, there is no, in my mind, way for these journalists, and I actually put the word journalist in inverted commas because it's just it's needless at this point. It's just clickbaiting, and it's so desperate and so shameless, I'd say, that it just ruins the experience a little bit. I think I'm all for rule breaking, but at the same time, in these particular set of circumstances, just everyone is upheld to just. There is an embargo rule. There is a certain time when you publish your reviews. Let's all stick to it. And it does reveal something about film criticism, this desperate push to be the first one out of the gate, and that I find incredibly grating, because let's face facts, these films are premiering here, but they will hit cinemas where audience members, the people we are writing for, will see them later on, and the conversation will keep on going and the conversation will change, but you don't have to be the first one out of the gate.
And also, not only the first one out of the gate, you also, in order to get those clicks, have to say something quite extreme. You can't just say, well, it's okay, or yeah, it was interesting, this and this. You've got to say, it was the best thing I've ever seen, or it was the worst thing I've ever seen. So it promotes a sort of polarization as well.
Right, and with regards to Joker, which I know we're going to move on to talk about, the tweets and the social media posts that I've read so far have been essentially, oh my God, it's the film of the year and stuff like that. And it's so obvious as a take. You're either going to take against it completely, or you're going to incense it so hard as to essentially be the one that is quoted in articles, like the reviews are in, and this is what people are saying, and it's just such a desperate bid for your name to be mentioned in these articles, and yeah, there's nothing wise or even journalistic about it.
How do you feel about that, Amber? Because this is sort of your area of competence as well.
Well, I think it's an issue on social media, of course, but also largely with the nature of digital journalism. And I notice this with a lot of reviews that I read. They need to lead in with a headline that's very extreme, and you lose all nuance on social media because people need to put across a very impassioned, extreme opinion to get attention. And unfortunately, it does work, but then it sways things. I notice this a lot. I'm a big fan of horror, and so I see this a lot in terms of horror films where something will pick up traction, and it's because, it's the most gruesome, disgusting film I've ever seen, it's amazing, and it builds all this hype, and you buy into it, and then you see it and you're like, this isn't very good really, and then it's lost all momentum, the bit that they were referring to as well, because it's so hyped up. But it is unfortunately just the nature of, I think, partly it's survival as well for digital journalism, that's kind of what's required of us. You have to sell your soul a bit to get people to click on the review by leading with something extreme, because if you're balanced about it, people will not as likely to pay attention.
But the danger, of course, is a race to the bottom as people stop trusting and stop reading stuff, because, as you say, they actually go to see the films, and then most films are 3-star films. And I know one publication who will go unnamed, which essentially bans its journalists from giving them 3-star reviews. You either have to give it a 4 or a 2. A 5 or a 1 obviously are also open, but if you want to give a 3, they say, well, is it a 2-star or a 4-star free?
Interesting. And a part of...
And that's a British newspaper.
I see.
So it's not digital media.
That's fascinating to me what you've just said, because like it is reflective on everything Amber just said, and I don't know, some films are 3-star, and this is also a thing about like even giving star ratings in the first place, because some publications don't, and I know
Sight and Sound, Variety,
for example, and we at Euronews don't as well, and the point is that yes, it is one of those things where it is an automatic and very immediate indicator of what we thought of that film, but then there's also that kind of risk of, will people actually bother to read the rest of the review?
Yeah.
Something also I've wanted to potentially write about for Euronews Culture for some while is I use Letterboxd, and Letterboxd is an interesting space because every review is this impassioned kind of meme-ified review of, you know, turning a review into a joke or, you know, something kind of punny, and it completely sways. It's not a realistic depiction of what the film is like at all, but it's almost like people jump on there and they just need to kind of get out their emotions of it, and also they want it to be the best liked review, so they go with something funny and extreme. And the reduction of using star ratings, I think that can limit things as well, because it's actually, I always try and rate things on Letterboxd. A lot of things I rate are about 2.5 to 3.5 stars, because most films there's a balance in there. It's rare that you get a film that is 5 stars. So yeah, I think it's just, and it's interesting how that's swaying, because a lot of people choose movies based on Letterboxd reviews now. So I wonder if that is kind of detracting people from actually watching a lot of stuff, because they're like, oh, well, it's only got, you know, mid reviews.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think there's nothing wrong with a 3-star review, 3-star, or a 3-star film for that matter. Good, decent 3-star film. Air Force One is a good, decent 3-star film, you know. And I know I'm going to come at me, haters. I don't care. Right. Let's get on to Joker Part 2, or Joker 2, let's call it. So we're going to do this in 2 parts. We're going to do a sort of spoiler-free, what we all think, and then we'll delve into it a little bit deeper, and we'll not be too concerned about giving away spoilers. So we've already established that we disagree. Let's hear your sides, and then I'll come in and knock you down one by one.
Because, as you say, we have established on this podcast that you are right, we are wrong, and we are your dancing monkeys.
Yeah, I tolerate that.
Yeah, and we're fine with it. We understand what the status quo is, and we like it, John. That's our deep, dark secret. Yeah, this didn't work for me at all. I didn't like the first one too much, but I appreciated what it was trying to do. And there was, of course, when it premiered in Venice, this whole conversation about it being incel-friendly and all of these things, and that, I think, got very out of hand. But as for Joker 2, Folie Deux, sorry, I had to drop that one in again. I don't know. I think that it was essentially written by somebody who doesn't know how to write, and I found it a little bit dull, a little bit grating, and just a little bit unnecessary. And in general, it's a film that does deal with the aftermath of the first film, which I appreciate. And there are certainly some very, very good performances in it. You know, as we were mentioning about, giving our takes. There, you know, you can dislike a film and appreciate certain things about it. And in this case, as much as I appreciated some of the performances, which are dedicated, and you know, whether it's physically, emotionally, what have you, this felt very hollow to me. In a way that I was upset that the initial boldness of a film that purported to be a jukebox musical and that took a different route, which I was just like, okay, I'm ready to be proven wrong. I'm ready to love this film and to say I may not have enjoyed the first one, but my God, did the second one bring the goods. And I ended up wanting it to take a bolder swing and to be a full-on musical. I almost needed it to be like a musical from start to finish, because that would have made a more cohesive and more unique vision.
Okay, right. Yeah, there's some really interesting points there. I think one thing I would just say very quickly before I hear what Amber has to say as well is I think there's been a lot of misinformation set out by the advertising and the public, the run-up to this film. So I think the thing about the jukebox musical, going to the press conference today, they immediately said, oh, it's not a musical. And it's like, all you heard about it beforehand is, we're doing a musical. And there are certain things I was reading, like the Wikipedia synopsis and certain interviews that had been left. And characters have changed completely to what was being put out there. So I think this is kind of why I wanted to do a spoiler-free bit, because there are things which are playing on your expectations, which they've built up as part of the experience. So, Amber, what was your take?
A little self-care can go a long way, especially amidst the hustle and bustle of the holidays. That's where Vegamore comes in. Trusted by millions, Vegamore is all about giving your hair the love and care it deserves. With their vegan and cruelty-free formulas, you can nourish and revitalize your strands while indulging in some much-needed pampering. Because let's face it, who couldn't use a bit more me time this time of year? Go to vegamore.com/ACAST, code ACAST. That's vegamor.com/ACAST, code ACAST.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
That's interesting, firstly, because I think that is a problem we run into now with social media again, with marketing. Something that I experienced this with was the film Longlegs, where it had this excellent marketing campaign, but it actually set it up to be, it was kind of quite different when you saw the film, because, the marketing is never going to match completely what it is, and especially if you're seeing a trailer a year or something, but even 6 months before you see the film, it's going to be very different and give you a different idea. So that's interesting to know. For me personally, I didn't like this either. I wasn't a huge fan of the first one though. I feel that it is a film that worships at its own altar, so it has this mythology around the Joker character, and because I do enjoy the Joker as a character in its many different forms, but not this particular one. And I think it's all these over-dramatic sort of stylistic choices. So one thing that bothers me is when Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker leans back and is smoking and it all billows out, all these flourishes of very theatrical movements. And I know it's part of the character, but it feels like a lot of time is dedicated to the imagery.
Cigarette, because I finished mine and I'm just recording something now.
Shall I carry on? So
we'll leave this in as well, because I'm not going to edit any of this out.
It adds to the atmosphere. The
way the guy shrunk away when I said that as well, I gave him a Paddington stare.
Yeah, and I felt a little bit like I caught a little bit of that stare, and I was just like, John, I haven't seen this side of you, and quite frankly, yes, please.
It was. We're going back to Baby Girl on this one.
From now on, you are Baby Girl.
So I'm trying to articulate this without ranting incoherently about it, but hopefully it will make sense. That I feel like the character is so in love with itself, and it limits itself through that. And rarely do we sort of expand out into other areas of the universe. I felt like in this. Other things that bothered me, I thought the writing I didn't like this character, that you start to kind of in going into detail of the character as well, you start to limit the character sometimes and you get a bit sick of them. I also didn't feel much chemistry between Lady Gaga and Joaquin Phoenix, actually. I wanted more from their relationship. I wanted them to have experiences together, to go and do more things together, and that felt quite limited. And the musical numbers, I enjoyed some of them. I actually did enjoy the visuals of this movie a lot, but they were it was in too quick succession. I wanted a bit of a gap between the songs so that they have more of an impact.
Listen, we're going to have to move straight into spoilers. Before we do, I'll give my sort of a brief sort of what I think. But I think to sort of respond to your criticisms and put my own thoughts across, it is too difficult to do that without inadvertently or advertently spoiling stuff. So let's do that. So first, before we go into spoilers, I am much more positive about the film. I really did like the first film. I gave it a 5-star review. I was very taken by. I thought it was imaginative. I thought it was, to some degree, quite subversive. I've got no problem with it relating an incel experience, because that is also a human experience, and that needs. Travis Bickle is kind of a bit of an incel, frankly, and if Taxi Driver was made today, it would get much the same, and especially if you read Paul Schrader's original script, which is full of misogyny, it might not be appreciated in quite the same way as it was at the time it was released. So I think the original was great. This one, I think, was very bold in the way it didn't repeat the original. It didn't repeat the same beats. And it very much is part 2 of the story. So I thought that was good. I think there were longueurs. I think there were moments in the film where I was a little bit bored. Things were moved slowly. I think there was a little bit too much slow motion. I know exactly what you mean, Amber, with the sort of leaning back, the slightly affectation, but yeah, there were bits that bothered me there. There were a few loose ends that the film had difficulty tying up. But in order to really give a robust defense of the film, I feel that it's now time to enter spoiler territory. So I'm going to do that straight away. So if you don't want the film spoiled, come back, bookmark this place and come back when you've seen the film. So now we're in spoilers. I would say that the film is actually an anti-Joker film, in that it isn't Joker. The character Arthur Fleck isn't Joker, and the whole point of the film is that the comic book characterization of Joker is not this person. This person is a psychopath who thinks he's Joker. And he is offered throughout a power fantasy of strength, that if he loses himself in this alter ego, he can be absolved of responsibility and morality and can empower himself. He can empower himself against his horrible surroundings and the powerlessness and pain that he suffers. He laughs when he's being tortured, when he's being beaten by the guards. And it gives him he frightens people. The moment but this does mean that the film it has difficulty, because it doesn't take any of the ordinary escape routes this film could take. There's no car chases, no fight scenes, no action sequences, no set pieces beyond the musical numbers, all of which are a Dennis Potter-like projection of mental states. And Dennis Potter-like projections of mental states don't make great musical sequences, because they tend to be very contained and they tend to be about kind of dark shit going on. So, he dances around the prison canteen, he dances around the courtroom. The film is a courtroom drama and a prison movie more than it is a comic book drama and an action thriller. And much more than it is a musical, for that matter. It's those things with musical numbers in them. So those failings I can perfectly admit, while saying that it wasn't trying to do that. It wasn't trying to fulfill those expectations. So taking it on its own terms, I think it was a very bold, brave 3.5, 4-star film, and it might have fallen perhaps and not been as completely brilliant as it could have been, but I really respect the fact that that's what they were trying for, rather than giving me something which was much more crowd pleasing. And I do think this film is going to be very, very. I think there's a real danger this film will do very badly on its second week.
Interesting. You see, when you say that, it's fascinating that you mentioned that, because I think that the parts that you mentioned, I really did enjoy the fact that, you know, like you say, he is somebody who is playing Joker, or Joker is more than just one man. It is something that can be passed on to somebody else. It's a mantle almost, and the film does that much in the same way. I appreciate it, even if in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises there is that line about the cowl, the Batman persona being something. It's not about one man; it's about an ideal. And the film does touch upon this, and especially towards the end, and because we're in spoiler territory, we're not going to be getting any more Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, but his mantle will be passed on in this case to a prison inmate, in a sense that I would almost have wanted, and I expected, that the Harley Quinn character played by Lady Gaga could have essentially, because she is very clearly, and I have to admit this is one of my problems with this film, is I found it incredibly predictable, that, you know, at no point do you, in that relationship, do you feel like, you know something's amiss. There isn't a twist there, and maybe it wasn't aiming for a twist, but there's something there which I think is a bit of a miss, to the extent that I almost wanted, like I said earlier on when we weren't talking spoilers, for either this film to be a full-on musical, or to be purely from Lady Gaga's perspective, her character's perspective, that we almost also just saw Arthur Fleck / the Joker, because the whole film plays from the beginning as a Looney Tunes cartoon to some of the comments made by,
which I loved, by
yes, and you know, some of the comments made by his psychologist in the film, played by Kathleen Turner, of just there is a split personality, that it is essentially Folie à Deux, the title, can refer to the fact that it is a shared delusion, and you assume it's the shared delusion that Joker / Arthur Fleck has with Harley Quinn, but it is almost the shared delusion that Arthur Fleck has with his own self, with his alter ego. That's the Folie à Deux at the heart of this film, and it is interesting in that respect. I just wish more would have been done with it, and I just wish there was just a little bit more boldness. And I appreciate what you said, John, about the fact that it is a bold swing. I needed it to be bolder.
What do you think, Amber?
So I find it very interesting what you say, because I do think that it is an important exploration of something that is very much a problem in society at the moment, particularly with younger men. And I think this loneliness, this feeling downtrodden and hurt by society, and the more you try to express that or seek help, sometimes being pushed into a corner, pushed into echo chambers, and then feeling even more alienated. And also the ideas around creating a whole new persona in order to cope with that, and in order to feel like somebody can be different, but at the same time your old persona is still very much there in the background, which is something a lot of us do. We all create an ego, and a lot of us go out and create this, we're pretending that we've got it together, and deep down we've got all these insecurities and difficulties going on. So I think it's really interesting in how it explores that. I also agree that the musical element of it, and the style they did it in, I thought was really exciting and interesting. I do worry that they give too much. It's too sympathetic a view of his character. I don't know what you think about that. If there's not enough balance given there of his portrayal, because he's solely the focus.
Well, I want to really jump in on this, because there's a real moment in the film where I went from going, come on, let's get out of the prison. How long is this going to go on? Where are we? We're not getting out. And you never get out of prison, except for a very brief escape. It's like the Shawshank Redemption. It's that prisoner who doesn't want to leave, who can't leave. And there's a moment where the film absolutely, for me, hinges and becomes brilliant, And that moment is when a character from the first Joker called Puddles comes into the courtroom, and you suddenly have Joker, who's in the height of his theatricality, makeup on, and he's fired his lawyers, and he's putting on this, Clarence Darrow sort of Southern gentleman lawyer persona. And this guy just says to him, hey, you killed someone in front of me, and I've been frightened, and you've traumatized me, and I'm never used to be frightened, and now I'm frightened. And that's the moment where Arthur Fleck realized there's a cost to what he's doing, and there's he has a moral responsibility. He discovers morality in that moment, that he can either be powerful or he can be good, but he can't be both. And in that moment, it becomes a genuine tragedy, because by getting rid of the makeup and getting rid of the costume, getting rid of the persona, he leaves himself utterly open and vulnerable, not only to what is going to happen, his own death, the death penalty, but also to the fact that he's going to lose Harlequin, because she isn't in love with him. She's in love with Joker. She's stanning. She's the fan. She's the fan of Joker, the first film. She's the one who misread Joker, the first film, as a power fantasy, and she's not willing to look at the actual human failure, which makes that power fantasy necessary or understandable as a strategy. And so, when they meet, you said they lack chemistry. Yes, they absolutely do, but that's again, I think that's the point. They're not supposed to be romantically in love. She's basically an obsessed fan, and the minute she finds out that he's a human being, she wants nothing more to do with him, and breaks his heart. I think that the ending that you talked about, David, weirdly connects to Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight, because the character who kills Arthur Fleck takes the knife that he's used to do it with and cuts his own mouth open in a way which more resembles Heath Ledger's Joker. And in the background, it's not done openly, so you could even miss it. But is more obviously a psychopath than Arthur Fleck, who is, he's just one of God's lonely men, to quote Travis Bickle.
Yeah. And I think there's something very interesting in what you mentioned about the Harley Quinn character, because at various points in this film, and it is very metatextual, the fact that there was a movie done about this, was it any good? And Arthur, who hasn't seen the film about his own life, is constantly asking for reassurance about how he was portrayed on screen. And there was this thing, and it goes back to what you were saying about this film being an anti-Joker film, which it's almost like we had Joker, and Joker Folie Deux, Joker 2, I'm being pretentious, just is a film almost about the reception of the first one in many ways. And in that respect, I do give it props, and in that respect, I appreciate some of the things that it is trying to do, and not that you've won me over with your arguments, even if we have established that you're right. I do think that that there's enough there for there to be some really interesting conversation around this film. Whether or not you like me, like Amber, that you like it or dislike it, I think it's not a film that's going to leave necessarily people indifferent.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a crowd pleaser. I really don't. I think I think partly because it's a little bit too boring in the middle, but also because it is a film that is denying expectations and disappointing expectations, and by doing that, you're going to get disappointed people.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's people will go into it expecting one thing and obviously then realise, this is quite different. What I do hope is that people have as nuanced a reception to it, because I think maybe the first one lacked that a little bit, and certainly I've seen in some spaces online, people just, it's that classic thing of make a film your personality, and they make I actually idolized the Joker because, and in a way, it's quite sweet because people saw things in the Joker, and this is female friends as well that I have that recognized struggles in the Joker character and why he acted in certain ways that he did. And it also, your interpretation of it is interesting because we do have a problem in society we talk about mental health, be kind and, you know, always support people but it's always too late because actually when you're trying to help somebody that's quite mentally unwell, it's very ugly and it's very, very difficult, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with it. And so it's interesting with Lady Gaga's character that there's kind of this, when it's transformed into a kind of a cool version of that then it's attractive, but not when they're dealing with actually what's underneath and the true insecurities and issues that somebody's dealing with. So I hope that people will have those kinds of discussions from it. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel that there's so much to talk about with this, and it's such an interesting film to have brought to Venice. Obviously, Venice was where we premiered the first installment. I actually won the Golden Lion. Do you think it could pick up any prizes here?
It's a very good question. I mean, obviously, it depends on the
Joaquin Phoenix, maybe?
The different juries. Joaquin Phoenix, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of, I suppose, maybe beyond our brief as journalists, because what are juries told? Obviously, with knowing that they're coming in, they must do their research, at least one would hope. And I don't know. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix's performance is, once again, it has to be said, very, very strong. He knows what he's doing with the character. Whether or not I personally wouldn't give it any prizes. That being said, will it win the Golden Lion? No, I don't think so.
The Brutalist.
The Brutalist. Maybe Queer. Who knows? I know you weren't as big a fan, but you know that to me was very bold and very distinctive.
Oh yeah, actually, Daniel Craig will get the copy of Old Pay for that.
Maybe
undeservedly, but
well, I mean, oh shit, you're right again, aren't you? Damn it. No, I don't think it will come out with any kind of awards glory at this festival. Maybe I'm wrong, and you know, if I am, it will be very, very interesting to see that conversation take a different spin. Whether or I don't know. I think in this case it's also because it is a second part that people, especially when you come to awards like the Oscars next year, I think people have seen a version of this performance, and that doesn't take away from how good the performance is this time. It really doesn't.
It's just a continuation. You've already been recognised.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Well, listen, let's get together again before the end of the festival and have another conversation, maybe sum up what our experiences of the festival have been. But until then, thanks so much, David.
Thank you very much, John.
And thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
$1-800-Flowers.com knows that a gift is never just a gift. A gift is an expression of everything you feel and helps build more meaningful relationships. 1-800-Flowers takes the pressure off by helping you navigate life's important moments by making it simple to find the perfect gift. From flowers and cookies to cake and chocolate, 1-800-Flowers helps guide you in finding the right gift to say how you feel. To learn more, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.